The transfer window drama is already heating up, and some of the biggest names in European football are right at the center of it. One story that has already taken a decisive turn involves Alessandro Bastoni. The Inter Milan defender has reportedly made his position crystal clear to FC Barcelona. The answer is a firm no. While Barcelona may have hoped to lure him to Spain, the situation has shifted dramatically elsewhere. Meanwhile, Florentino Pérez is preparing what insiders are describing as a massive €160 million move, targeting a star from Bayern Munich as Real Madrid's next blockbuster signing. At the same time, Juventus appear to be closing in on a shock goalkeeper deal involving Liverpool FC. And in Madrid, another change is unfolding. Álvaro Arbeloa is heading out, but the club already knows exactly who will replace him. All of that sets the stage for another chaotic day in the transfer market. One of the most intriguing developments surrounds Alisson Becker. After 8 seasons filled with success, including a UEFA Champions League triumph and a Premier League title, his journey with Liverpool may be approaching its final chapter. According to reports from La Gazzetta dello Sport, Juventus have already made meaningful progress in their pursuit of the Brazilian goalkeeper. Although Alisson is currently sidelined with a muscle injury, conversations between his representatives and the Italian club have reportedly been positive. More importantly, the player himself is said to be open to the idea of a move. A 3-year contract has been placed on the table, and for a 33-year-old goalkeeper, that is far from a temporary solution. Instead, it signals a clear commitment from both sides. Juventus are looking for stability between the posts as they attempt to rebuild toward the top of Serie A. Their current option, Michel Di Gregorio, has delivered promising moments, but moments alone are rarely enough for a club with Juventus ambitions. Alisson represents something different: authority, experience, and reliability built over nearly a decade of elite competition in England. Goalkeepers with that level of pedigree are not easily found, and they certainly cannot be replaced from a catalogue of alternatives. Liverpool's position in this situation is also worth examining carefully. The club recently extended Alisson's contract until 2027, but the reasoning behind that move may not be as straightforward as it first appeared. According to the Italian report, the extension was largely about protecting the club's asset rather than guaranteeing his long-term future. Liverpool have already invested in Georgi Mamardashvili, widely seen as the goalkeeper who will eventually inherit the starting role. It is difficult to imagine a club committing fully to 2 long-term number ones at the same time. In reality, Liverpool appear to be managing a gradual transition, and Alisson likely understands that. That perspective may explain why the idea of returning to Italy is appealing. At Juventus, he would likely reclaim the undisputed number 1 shirt and write the final chapter of his career somewhere new, rather than remaining in a dressing room where the next generation has already been introduced. There is nothing undignified about that calculation. In fact, it may represent the most logical outcome for all parties involved. For Liverpool supporters, however, the real concern is not simply whether Alisson might leave, it is whether the club is fully ready to hand the reins to Mamardashvili immediately. If the Brazilian departs this summer, the transition will happen overnight. There will be no gradual overlap, no easing in period. Mamardashvili would step directly into one of the most demanding goalkeeper roles in world football. Elsewhere in Europe, another high-profile transfer saga is unfolding around Michael Olise. Bayern Munich have taken a remarkably firm stance regarding their young star. Sporting director Max Eberl has made the club's position unmistakably clear: there is no release clause, there will be no negotiations, and there will be no sale, not for €100 million, not even for €200 million. According to journalist Christian Falk, Bayern's official message is simple: Olise is not leaving this summer. Yet despite that statement, Real Madrid remain interested. In fact, reports suggest that Florentino Pérez is still preparing an enormous financial package valued between €160 and €165 million. When a club with Bayern's bargaining power says the door is closed and Madrid respond by drafting a record-level offer, it says a lot about Pérez's mindset. It almost feels as though he has gone so long without hearing the word no that he simply refuses to accept it. Part of the reason for Madrid's persistence is obvious when you examine Olise's numbers. This season he has produced 16 goals and 29 assists in just 41 appearances, an extraordinary return for an attacking midfielder. His chemistry with Harry Kane has been particularly impressive, forming a partnership that Bayern had been searching for in recent years. Even more remarkable is how quickly Alisson adapted after arriving from Crystal Palace FC. Many players require months to settle into Bayern's demanding environment. Alisson walked in and looked comfortable from day one. At 24 years old, he is no longer viewed as a promising prospect, he is already a fully developed elite player. That reality explains why other clubs are paying attention as well. Liverpool, for example, are also monitoring the situation closely. With Mohamed Salah expected to leave as a free agent at the end of the season, the club needs a long-term solution on the right flank rather than a temporary replacement. Alisson fits that profile almost perfectly. The difficulty for Liverpool is that they may find themselves standing behind Real Madrid in the queue, and Madrid have not even managed to get through Bayern's door yet. For now, Bayern hold every advantage. Without a release clause in the contract, there is no pressure forcing them to negotiate and no mechanism compelling them to sell. The club can simply stand firm and reject every approach. And judging by their current stance, that is exactly what they intend to do. The situation surrounding Michael Alisson continues to generate enormous attention, but the reality inside Bayern Munich appears much calmer than the rumors suggest. The German club are not preparing to sell him or quietly easing him toward the exit. Quite the opposite. Bayern want to reward him with a new contract, strengthening their long-term commitment rather than sending him off to another European giant. That means the power in this situation does not lie with Real Madrid, and it certainly is not in the hands of Liverpool FC either. Ultimately, the only factor that could truly change the equation is Alisson himself. If he ever decides that he wants a move, that personal decision becomes the one variable that no boardroom directive can fully control. Until then, Bayern remain confident that he will stay. The real question is whether the allure of the Santiago Bernabéu stadium might eventually become too powerful to ignore, even for Bayern's leadership. Meanwhile, another complicated situation is developing at Manchester United involving Joshua Zirkzee. According to reports from Football Insider, the club are open to allowing the striker to leave this summer, but only after they secure a replacement. On paper, that sounds like a structured transfer strategy. In reality, it resembles something closer to a negotiation with their own squad, where one departure can only happen after another arrival is confirmed. The story of Zirkzee's time at United is also more complicated than the raw numbers suggest. When the club signed him from Bologna FC 1909, they were not recruiting a traditional number 9. Instead, they were bringing in a player who thrives between the lines, a forward who links midfield and attack, drifting into pockets of space rather than occupying the penalty box. The idea made sense in theory. However, the pace and physical intensity of the Premier League proved to be a different challenge entirely. What looked elegant on a tactical board did not always translate when matches were played at full speed in difficult winter conditions. Now the landscape has shifted again. The arrival of Benjamin Sesko has altered the attacking hierarchy at Old Trafford. Suddenly Zirkzee has gone from being a secondary option to a player who no longer fits clearly into the club's plans. Despite that uncertainty, interest from across Europe is growing. Clubs such as Juventus, Napoli, AC Milan, Atlanta BC, and Como 1907 are all reportedly monitoring his situation. A return to the tactical environment of Serie A might actually suit his style far better than England's relentless tempo. For Manchester United, the real challenge is turning a potentially awkward exit into smart business. It would be unfair to place the entire blame on Zirkzee alone. Over the last 2 seasons, Old Trafford has hardly been the easiest environment for any attacking player to flourish. Structural issues across the team have affected everyone, and Zirkzee simply became another player caught in that turbulence. Another name generating serious transfer buzz is Morgan Rogers. According to reports from the Daily Mirror, for major clubs, Arsenal FC, Chelsea FC, Manchester United, and Bayern Munich are all monitoring the 23-year-old attacking midfielder. However, Aston Villa FC are standing firm on their valuation, which sits around £80 million. At first glance, it looks like a fierce bidding war is about to begin. But if you examine the situation more closely, it starts to resemble several clubs using the same name to shape their transfer planning rather than a genuine four-way battle. Some of those links raise legitimate questions. Arsenal, for example, already strengthened their creative midfield options last summer with the arrival of Eberechi's. It is not immediately obvious where Rodgers would fit into Mikel Arteta's tactical setup unless the manager plans to deploy multiple attacking midfielders simultaneously. Chelsea's interest feels more logical given the ongoing uncertainty surrounding Enzo Fernandez. Bayern Munich's involvement, however, may be the most transparent move of all. With Jamal Musiala struggling with recurring fitness issues, Rodgers appears to be viewed primarily as a contingency option rather than a guaranteed starter. Statistically, Rodgers has produced a respectable season, 10 goals and 7 assists across 45 appearances. Those numbers are solid without being extraordinary. What truly attracts interest is his playing profile, progressive movement with the ball, direct attacking instincts, and composure in tight spaces. Aston Villa invested £15 million to bring him into the squad and gave him a central role in their project. They are not about to let him leave cheaply, which is why £80 million is effectively the starting line for negotiations rather than the opening bid. For Manchester United in particular, the decision becomes strategic. The club must determine whether Rodgers would genuinely improve the balance of the squad or whether he is simply a name that looks appealing on paper but complicates the overall tactical structure. At the same time, another transfer story that once looked inevitable is now beginning to unravel. For months, speculation suggested that Alessandro Bastoni was destined to join FC Barcelona. Both the Italian and Spanish media repeated the same narrative, a summer departure from Inter Milan that was almost certain to happen. Yet the player himself seems to have missed that particular memo. According to reports from Corriere dello Sport, Bastoni is far from enthusiastic about the proposed move. His stance is not hostile toward Barcelona, but neither is it enthusiastic. If anything, his focus remains firmly on Milan and Inter's pursuit of the league title in Serie A. Loyalty has always been a defining theme in Bastoni's career. When Pep Guardiola and Manchester City previously showed interest, the defender reportedly asked his club to block the approach before serious discussions could even begin. Now Barcelona find themselves in a similar situation. Contact between representatives has taken place. That is simply how modern football operates. Agents speak, clubs inquire, possibilities are explored. But from the player's perspective, there has been no definitive green light and certainly no enthusiastic push toward Catalonia. Instead, Bastoni appears entirely focused on Inter's current campaign rather than planning a move abroad. Barcelona's interest is understandable. Bastoni perfectly fits the profile they want in a modern defender, left-footed, comfortable in possession, and experienced at the highest level of European football. However, wanting a player and actually signing him are two very different challenges. Right now, this story feels less like a transfer negotiation and more like a test of loyalty, one that Bastoni continues to pass every time speculation intensifies. So for the moment, we are left with a familiar pattern, plenty of noise from the outside world and very little confirmation from the player himself. Bastoni has never shown signs of searching for an exit route, and nothing about the current situation suggests that mindset has changed. The only real question now is whether the outside pressure eventually becomes strong enough to force the conversation, or whether Bastoni simply continues doing what he has always done and stays exactly where he is. In football, loyalty is often praised as a virtue, but sometimes it raises a more complicated question. At what point does loyalty begin to look like stubbornness? Is a player truly devoted to his club, or is he simply waiting for the right offer rather than the loudest one? These are the kinds of questions surrounding Alessandro Bastoni right now. Despite persistent interest from FC Barcelona and other European giants, the Inter Milan defender continues to stay firmly rooted where he is. Some interpret that as unwavering commitment, others wonder if he is simply waiting for the perfect moment and the perfect proposal. Not every footballer demands the spotlight. Some announce themselves loudly with goals, celebrations, and headlines. Others quietly control the rhythm of matches while someone else collects the applause. Morton Jolman belongs very much to the second category. The captain of Sporting CP has built his reputation through discipline, intelligence, and calm authority in midfield rather than flashy moments. According to reports from Abola, the Danish midfielder is increasingly likely to leave Lisbon this summer, with Manchester City already positioning themselves as one of the leading contenders for his signature. What makes the story particularly interesting is not simply the transfer interest but the timing of it. Jolman is reportedly determined to secure a third consecutive Primera Liga title with Sporting before considering his next move. That mindset does not reflect a player drifting toward the exit door. Instead, it suggests someone who wants to complete his mission first and leave only after the job is finished. Sporting appear to understand this as well. Internally, the club has reportedly accepted that this summer may represent the natural moment for their captain to move on. In modern football, departures often follow a familiar script that the captain lifts the trophy, kisses the badge one last time, and both sides frame the exit as a mutual decision. Another intriguing layer in the story involves Hugo Viana, sporting director, who already has connections within the structure of Manchester City. Reports indicate that informal discussions between the clubs have taken place. In transfer language, the word informal does a lot of work. It usually means that the groundwork has quietly begun and that the interest is genuine rather than speculative. Clubs like Manchester City rarely move impulsively. Instead, they build their case quietly, laying the foundation months in advance before making a decisive move when the price and timing align. If conversations are already happening in the spring, it often signals where the story could lead by the summer window. The real debate is whether Jolman's style will translate seamlessly into the intensity of the Premier League. In Portugal, his tactical discipline and positional awareness have been key strengths. The atmosphere at Estadio José Alvalade has proven his leadership and character. But performing in the high-speed midfield battles of England is an entirely different test. If the move happens, the environment at Etihad Stadium will reveal whether he becomes a crucial component in City's machine or whether the step-up exposes new challenges. While transfer stories dominate the headlines, another major decision may be forming behind the scenes at Real Madrid. According to journalist Fabrice Hawkins of RMC Sport, the club has begun assembling a short list of potential managerial candidates, and one name on that list is Didier Deschamps. The current manager of the France national football team remains under contract through the 2026 FIFA World Cup, but the fact that his name is even being monitored by Madrid suggests serious consideration. In football, being on a short list is rarely meaningless. The context around Madrid's coaching situation adds weight to the speculation. Alvaro Arbeloa is reportedly under pressure following a difficult season that could end without silverware. If the club were to suffer elimination against Bayern Munich in the UEFA Champions League, it might be the moment when club president Florentino Pérez decides that patience has run out. Personal relationships often matter at Real Madrid, but results tend to matter even more. When trophies disappear, loyalty can suddenly become negotiable. Deschamps' appeal to Madrid reportedly rests on three key factors. First, he is widely respected for his ability to manage complex dressing rooms filled with star players, a skill that is sometimes even more important than tactical brilliance. Second, his record of consistent success speaks for itself. And third, he already enjoys the trust of several French players within Madrid's squad. Add the fact that he speaks fluent Spanish, and the appointment begins to look less like a gamble and more like a calculated strategic move. Timing may also play a decisive role. Once the 2026 World Cup concludes, Deschamps will become a free agent. That means there would be no compensation fee, no complicated release clause, just a conversation between one of the world's most successful coaches and one of the world's most powerful clubs. For Real Madrid, opportunities like that rarely go unnoticed. For now, however, Deschamps has chosen silence. He has made no public commitments and closed no doors. In many ways, that approach is exactly what you would expect from someone who understands the landscape perfectly. When the right moment arrives, the decision will likely become clear, but until then, every option remains open.